Has rescinded its decision to reinstate a member of Provincial Executive Committee accused of raping his 8-year-old daughters. The former MEC and his stepson, who's accused of the same offence, are currently out on bail of 20,000 rand each. The ANC Women's League demanded that the man immediately step down from his position or be suspended by the national leadership. Numsa was also outraged, and we have the spokesperson on the line, Phakamile Hlubi-Majola. Thank you so much for speaking to us. First, your reaction on this about turn.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having us on your show. Well, obviously, it's a step in the positive direction. The fact that the ANC in Mpumalanga has taken a decision to do an about turn effectively and place this MEC back on suspension. We were truly outraged. I mean, this was not something that should ever have happened. When you consider the severity of the charges that this man was facing, and that the PEC at that time took a decision the very same day that he was released on bail to reappoint him, I mean, it boggles the mind. What was going through their minds? At what point did they ever think that something like this would ever be acceptable?
Well, it was interesting to see statements attributed to the Deputy President of the party, Didi Mabuza, saying that the ANC must be left to deal with its own internal affairs. And this also had to do with this particular issue. What is your view of that? This is the governing party telling the nation that not only during the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children, that the ANC must be left to its decisions and to speak about it within themselves. This is a governing party.
The problem is that the ANC is not some soccer club. The ANC is the governing party. The people who are appointed to positions, in the case of this PEC member, he was an MEC. So they end up becoming public officials. So it is actually our business what happens in the ANC, who they appoint, and the kind of reputation that that person has. If that person is facing serious criminal charges, the ANC cannot just simply say, oh, well, it's an internal decision. This person was going to be imposed onto the public. And there is absolutely no reason why members of the public should accept a candidate who has such a cloud hanging over his head. And I think also, much more importantly, we have a crisis of gender-based violence in this country. And the reason that it is so bad is because South African society generally does not want to accept that they have a problem with equality of men and women. And when you have a situation where a man has been accused of raping his own children, and the response from the community is to welcome him back like a hero, and then worse, the response from the political organization is to reinstate him, the message that's sent to the victims is that it doesn't matter what you say.
Allow me to ask this question. Do you think his reinstatement had anything to do with his being released on bail, the bail conditions and the amount that he eventually had to pay?
Well, one of my understanding, based on the media reports, was that the NPA itself confirmed that his bail conditions were relaxed as a result of the fact that he was reinstated. Whether that's correct or not, I'm not sure, but that I certainly saw in one of the media reports. And if that's the case, that is extremely worrying, because now that a decision has been taken to rescind that, what happens to those bail conditions? And one of the things that Numsa has pushed very strongly for is that when it comes to serious crimes of a sexual nature, particularly against women and children, bail should be denied. Had bail been denied in this instance, we believe it would have gone much further in protecting these children and protecting the community at large. That should be the attitude that we should have when it comes to crimes of this nature.
What would your advice then be? Because there's a view by some that because the ANC has taken a decision that it's still, or actually failed to take a decision that is definitive on people accused or who've had charges preferred on them, that what happens to them stepping down. It was understood at some point that this was a line that was to be followed, but recently there seems to be some toing and froing on it, and there are those who've suggested that this decision to reappoint this PEC member is as a result of that. What are your thoughts on it? What are your sources? Because you know, there is some sort of a network within the labor unions and political parties, and you are at least privy to some information.
Well, since 2013, we've not been, by virtue of the fact that we took a decision not to support the ANC, because in all honesty, if we look at what this decision reflects, it reflects for us as Numsa, a trade union which is pushing for socialism and genuine equality. Karl Marx once said that when capitalism is at its worst, it is barbaric. And if you analyze the decision that was taken by the PEC to reinstate a person with such heinous charges, to us, that speaks to the crisis of the system that the ANC government is promoting. And this is why we took the decision to reject the ANC and the alliance. And I think ultimately this is a conversation that the public needs to start to have. We have a very serious problem here. Gender-based violence in South Africa is a crisis because capitalism as a system thrives on this type of inequality. So for us, it's sad that we are even having this conversation, that this decision was even taken in the first place. But unfortunately, it does prove us right on many respects in terms of the fact that what we've said from the beginning, that the ANC no longer deserves to govern by virtue of the fact that it is anti-working class, and as long as that is its agenda, women in this country will continue to suffer.
But what are you as Numsa then offering during this period? What programs are you putting in place? And let's talk about longevity as well, because unfortunately it just becomes such a seasonal thing, almost like it's a festival. 16 days, we talk about it, we observe it, we move on. Yet it is a problem that is with us 365 days of the year, 24 hours of the day.
You know, you hit the nail right on the head. And for women in this country, it's like we live a separate life from men. You know, we live a life of fear. We live a life of anxiety. Every time we leave the house, we're not sure if we're going to be safe wherever we're going. And it's abnormal. We've accepted the abnormal. And I think, honestly, what we can do right now is to fight back. As Numsa this week, we've, especially as of yesterday, we had a whole day webinar where we were focusing on violence in the workplace and sexual harassment in the workplace, and deepening our understanding of that so that we can do better at defending our members on these issues. We are also pushing for South Africa to ratify the ILO's legislation around this so that we can really see some meaningful changes. But those are just reforms. That's not enough. In order for us to really tackle this problem, we do need both men and women to come together. We do need to eradicate the system from its roots and from its foundations. Because until we do that, until we recognize and deal with inequality effectively, we will never, ever be able to end the cycle of gender-based violence in this country.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Numsa spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola. And